Hey, everybody, this is Gavin Durson, and this is the Keep It Simple podcast, a podcast about simple church, house church, organic church. Appreciate you guys checking in. I'm solo today. This is going to be one of the next installments in what I'm calling Simple Church Conversations. And so, Tom is not with me, but I'm going to be interviewing a great friend of mine that I've gotten to know over the last several years named Bart Scarborough. And I won't tell you his whole story. I'll just let you get into it. But I will say this is probably one of the more encouraging podcasts I've ever done. Bart and I felt like everything we talk about in this episode really is kind of hitting me and my heart and where I see house church and simple church kind of going, at least in my life, and what I want to be about encouraging a different way, maybe of thinking about house church than a lot of what even's out there today. More of a slower pace type of house church, and we'll talk about that in this episode. I will say that we ended this episode and we kept talking, and it was almost like we took it to another level of just good stuff that was really encouraging me, and I just felt like there was such a neat thing happening. I recorded it, and I'll end up putting that out as a shorter part 2 of this, but I didn't want to tack it on to the end. So this will be part 1 with Bart Scarborough. I think you're going to enjoy it. And we're about to get into that now. So before we do, I want to let everybody know, if you haven't seen on the website, we will be having a Simple Church retreat coming up September 10th and 11th in Stanford, Kentucky. You can go to simplechurchalliance.com and find out more details about that. And we'd love to have you join us. It's pretty laid back. It's pretty much like a 24-hour house church meeting. We're going to have a lot of fun, fellowship, some great food, great accommodations, and just a lot of relationship building and seeing what God's up to in our lives and looking to Him together as a group of folks, trying to figure out, hey, what's He saying to us and what direction is He leading us in? So it's a lot of fun. And if you're new to Simple Church, you'd be certainly welcome. If you're an old timer, you're welcome as well. So check that out. And without further ado, this is my conversation with Bart Scarborough. But anyways, yeah, so I kind of told you the deal. I just wanted to kind of have a little conversation with you and hear a little bit of your story more and pick your brain on some things that I tend to think about. So we'll just get started with that. Why don't you just tell a little bit about yourself and your family and kind of your background and kind of your 3-minute history.
Sure. Well, grew up here in Georgia. Went to the University of Georgia. I want to throw that out there as soon as I could. Go Dogs.
Of course.
Pull that in there as quickly as I could. But met my bride on a blind date in college, which, yes, it worked. And we've been married 27 years, but for 25 years was on Young Life staff, working with youth in Metro Atlanta and then in North Carolina. And then the last 16 years we were in Athens, back in Athens again. But near the end of that time, I was really worn out, maybe even burned out, was having some real issues with my memory. I had lost, I wasn't sleeping well, and some of that was family issues, some of that was stress, but I wasn't sleeping but a few hours a night. And after like 14 months of that, all of a sudden I couldn't remember things. People kept saying, "We've already had this conversation. I don't remember this part." And I would keep saying, "No, I have a good memory. We haven't had this conversation." Anyway, that led us to going, what's next? They couldn't figure out what was going on or how to help, really. And so we decided we needed a long sabbatical, something that Young Life probably couldn't afford me. So we sold the house and the cars. We bought an RV, and my wife and I and our 2 kids, we traveled the country for 16 months. Hit all the lower 48 states. We hit Canada a few times and Mexico. 27 national parks. And it was the greatest thing we had ever done. And greatest thing, I mean, without a doubt, the greatest thing we've done. Great for our marriage, our family, our health. But it was really good. We adopted our son when he was 4.5 from Nicaragua. And so it was real important for us to kind of pull in as a family again. We did that right as we brought him home, but it just we needed more time to do that. So it gave us another chance to really cocoon, is what they call it. And it was a sweet gift. We did it, and felt like it was just what the doctor ordered for us. And then as we got off the road, praying about what was next, we decided we didn't decide, I don't think at all, really. The Lord led us. I mean, just so clearly led us to start this next venture. Ancient Way Farm is the name of it. But we've got a little itty bitty retreat center where folks who are tired and worn out and come and pull away to be with the Lord. Get off the grid for 24 hours, get off the grid for 3 or 4 days, and just can be still and know that He is God. And so, yeah, that's what the latest is. We've been doing that now for 3 years.
Man.
So off the road and doing this new ministry down here outside of Columbus, Georgia.
So I was thinking, like, in that story, I think I met you. I was trying to remember, we share a common friend, Barrett Kaufman, who I need to get on here and do this with. It would be, well, I am going to do that. That would be awesome. But I think I met him through you, and I was trying to remember it. I think I met you before, when you were still with Young Life, maybe once, but I felt like we really started to connect more around that time that you were leaving Young Life. And I know that we had some conversations there, as, you know, someone who's leaving this parachurch ministry that's working with youth, of course, working with FCA, and what I did, very familiar with Young Life, and loved Young Life and supported and spoke at Young Life meetings and things, and just, you know, so we shared that common interest there. And I remember one of the things that you were kind of going on this adventure about the time that we were having our daughter, and some of the things that you were starting to were stirring in my heart, even beyond leaving, you know, even with doing Simple Church. And I've discussed some of this with you, and even on some of these recorded conversations I have with folks, but even how, you know, all I ever knew was sort of this ministry where we're kind of doing stuff for God, you know. And I think I was part of the process for me in doing Simple Church has been a long, slow learning process. That's not necessarily what God wants me to do, is to wake up and try to do things for Him. But I know that, you know, you and I have shared some, and a big part of this was this Godspeed. You know, we joke about it a lot. I'll say, hey, what are you up to? I'm just going Godspeed today. Yeah. You know, tell me a little bit about what is Godspeed, and what does that mean, and how did you encounter that, and how's that been a part of your journey? Yeah, well, it's you know, it's a video that a friend of ours, Matt Canless, put together. And Matt was graduating seminary, and he was talking to Eugene Peterson, and Peterson was saying, hey, you need to go find a small little congregation and move into the neighborhood and kind of live your life with the people in a real slow, intentional manner. And Matt's like, you know, after listening to Eugene for years speak, he said, okay, yeah, I'm ready. Tell me what to do. And he kind of laughed and said, well, you're probably not going to be able to do that in the States. You're going to have to leave the country to do that. And Matt thought, well, that'll never happen. But he ended up, he went to Scotland and went to seminary there, and he ended up working at a church there. And it's that journey. It's a 30-minute video on Vimeo called Live Godspeed. Anyway, the whole idea is the subtitle of that video is The Pace of Being Known. And I think for most of my life, I was living at a pace that was not very healthy. I was living at a pace where I wasn't known. I probably was living at a pace where I couldn't know the Lord very well. I was going so hard and so fast. And Matt interviews N.T. Wright in this video. And N.T. Wright talks about this theologian who wrote a book called The 3 Mile Per Hour God. And the idea was that the average human walks an average of 3 miles per hour. And God became a human and walked amongst us at 3 miles per hour. And now we are moving too fast and we're missing God. And we've got to slow down to maybe encounter Him in a more real way. And so that's kind of the premise of this little video that Matt did.
but it was profound for me. It was profound for me. I kind of say it was the final straw maybe on this journey that I'd been on for maybe 20 years. I remember one of my bosses gave me a little book by Henry Nouwen called "In the Name of Jesus," and there was this phrase, "the downward mobility of Jesus." And when he gave me that, I was like, "This is it. Yes."
Have we talked about that?
Perfect sense.
Have we talked about it? Have we talked about the "In the Name of Jesus"? I don't know. I don't know that we have, but that book, we led a Simple Church retreat last year, and it's actually coming back up here this fall. Man, it'd be awesome if we could get you all to join us. But anyways, that's what we did. We read the whole book, "In the Name of Jesus." We talked about that whole book. I don't think we talked about that. I don't think that's your memory. I don't think we ever talked about that. That's again. Amazing. That's amazing.
But that was probably 20 some odd years ago. And I realized, wait, this is the way of Jesus, but nothing in my family of origin, my church, my ministry that I was working with, nothing in the culture of the country encouraged that. As a matter of fact, it was the exact opposite. They discouraged that, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so that was the beginning of what I call like this rub, like I know we're going to have this rub this side of heaven, right? It's never going to be perfect. But that was the beginning of this real rub of like the way of Jesus versus everything else that I'm experiencing. And there've been a lot of kind of signpost over the years. A good friend of mine's a singer-songwriter. He wrote this song called "Mary in a Martha's World," which you can imagine what that might be about. But the phrase in it that has really haunted me is, "The pace that you have chosen suits you poorly." Like I'm playing a part in this thing. I'm choosing a pace that is not healthy. It's not been good. And really, one of the things we talked about recently, Gavin, was I was worried that I was doing all this stuff and building a kingdom with a lowercase k. I was going hard at the expense of my soul and maybe my family and some other things. And I was worried that it hit me. Maybe I'm building, I don't know what I'm doing, I mean, it really hit me pretty hard. But I would say this video was one of the last straws that made me go, you know what, in this rub, I've just decided I'm ready to be over here on this side, I'm ready to live differently than I have.
When we talked about this last week, we were chatting and you mentioned that, and I've thought about that so much. I've even shared it with some other folks about this idea of like spending a lot of our life, even with good intentions and ministry context and the church building, we don't think of it that way, but I think you'd said, I think I've spent a lot of my life building the kingdom lowercase k. Yeah. And I want to spend the rest of my life building the kingdom uppercase K into the lives of people. And that's not something that you can, measure or fits really well on a ministry report. And man, right. I've thought about that so much. That was a great word to me, because I'm always, I'm trying to process what God's doing in my life, and we're all always doing that. He's always growing us, teaching us. And man, that is, when you said that, that's something I've thought about that probably every day since, building the kingdom, capital K, into the lives of people. And I love that. So man, I've been so encouraged by, you guys really used you and some of this to really encourage me. Even that, we joked a lot about when I was coaching basketball and trying to do all this craziness, about slowing down. And of course, when you're coaching high school basketball, you're not slowing down. But man, so good. Yeah. So you have been on this process, and now you've been doing this Ancient Way Farms 3 years now. And tell me a little bit about, like, what have you learned about going Godspeed? What is it that have you been able to go Godspeed? Even, how is that going for you? And what are some of the things that God's teaching you as you've intentionally tried to adjust your life to travel 3 miles per hour?
I would say it has not been easy, obviously, right? Eugene Peterson said you need to probably leave the country because nothing in America is going to let you do that. So it hasn't necessarily been easy, but we we just so wanted to be on this side of the rub,
Mm-hmm.
and so we really tried to be intentional about living differently. The name Ancient Way Farm comes from this verse in Jeremiah 6:16 that but it's stand at the crossroads and look, ask for the ancient path, ask where the good way is, and walk in it, comma, then you will find rest for your souls.
Man.
So what we're trying to encourage others to do, and what we're trying to do ourselves, is stand at the crossroads and look, like take some inventory. Stop. You've got to look around and pay attention. You've got to stop. We don't do that good in our culture. So we're encouraging folks that come to retreat with us, pay attention. What's God up to?
Mm-hmm.
Stand at the crossroads and look. Ask for the ancient way, the ancient path, the good way. And we're saying that's just the way of Jesus. Like, pay
Mm-hmm.
attention to what Jesus did.
Yeah.
And what Jesus often did was go away to spend time with the Father, to receive his marching orders, to receive his identity, to receive his value and worth, so that he could go back in to do the ministry he was called to do. Stand at the crossroads and look, ask for that ancient path, walk in Jesus's footsteps, walk in it, right? It says walk in it, not run around like a chicken with your head cut off in it, which is what we do it so much in our culture. Walk in it, then you'll find rest for your souls. And so we're doing it. We're doing it. But it is really countercultural, and that's not always easy to do. But
No.
it has felt in the rub. I'm glad I'm on this side. It's felt right, and it's felt holy, and it's felt life-giving, and it's felt different than what we've done in the past. I don't know if I answered your question,
No,
David,
no,
but
no,
that's
no. Yeah, no, that's good. I'm just thinking like and a little bit about my journey and story of everything, but for me leaving FCA, and I don't know that when I left FCA to start house church that I had this kind of this, for lack of a better term, Godspeed in mind. And I think that when, as I've shared with you, once we had our daughter, and I basically had to hit pause on all things in life for a year, and still kind of have, God sort of forced me into Godspeed, and I didn't like it at first, and I've been kind of processing that, because even in house church, and thinking like, I mean, there's this idea that, well, and I kind of brought this into it, well, we're going to do church better, we're gonna be able to start more churches. I don't think I like maybe broadcast that, but that was always kind of this idea, like, this is a better system, we can maybe even be more efficient in the system of it, and that can kind of lead to still that same thing of like, wow, we've left some things that, but that sort of require a fast-paced system to keep moving, whether it be budgets, buildings, programs, professional clergy, whatever. Like, you kind of leave that, but you can still try to hold on to that system of churning things out, disciples, things that are
yes.
good. And that's something that, as I've been working through what God's saying to me, I see that a lot. And even like the popularity of house church and these sorts of things that have come about in the last 10 years that I've been doing this, that, that's what I think a missing piece of it. And that God, I think, is wanting us to slow down a bit. But, I wrestle with this, and I'd be interested in just sort of getting some commentary, your thoughts about this, because I think for me, like, a thing has always been, and I would say even when I was younger, that there's an urgency to the gospel. We would hear that kind of language,
Yeah.
and the idea is that, man, like, there's people all around us who are lost. They need Christ. They're looking for Christ. They don't know it. He's the answer for them. And like, why would I not go fast to try to help those people? Like, how could I possibly justify traveling 3 miles per hour if I can go 40 miles per hour and help more people? I mean, I think
Yeah.
that's a rub that, I still have, because I do care about that. But what are your thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, I don't think the idea of going at God's speed or 3 miles per hour is a invitation to be lazy, or anything like that at all. I don't think that's what it means at all. I think it really means living in your humanity, in your limitlessness. No, the opposite of that. Limitedness. Yeah. Limitedness. Yeah. That we have limits.
Yeah.
Living, knowing that we're human and that God is God. And often I think what I did in my ministry is I lived kind of thinking like maybe I was a little God, you know, and I could just go and go and go and go and go and go and go. And we just weren't designed that way, right? If you even think about the rhythm of the creation and the Sabbath mixed in there, I mean, it's that taking time to rest was how we were created. And I think, man, I was sold a lie for a long time that I could just go on limitless, and I think that's more what it means. It doesn't mean you can be, you know, people might ask, are you just navel gazing? Or are you just sitting around all day? No, we're very, we have a lot going on, you know,
Yeah.
But we're grounded first. We're rooted first. We know our identity as the beloved, and then we're able to move out of that to do ministry in healthy ways versus finding and what I did for so long, finding my identity probably in just doing really good young life or doing really good Christian stuff. And that was what wore me down so much, I think, trying to maybe almost prove myself. And so now we're trying to go, wait, you know, no, we are his beloved. And then ministering out of that and knowing that we, you know, we can't do it all.
That's right. Yeah, I think that's one thing early on. I think people moving into house church at all, wherever they're at, I think that is at least something that I think that maybe the body of Christ is waking up to. I would like to think at the most basic levels to say, hey, wait a minute, like Jesus came here to change the world. He spent only 3 years of ministry, and he spent those primarily with 12 people. And he did these weird things, like he would try to get away from the crowds. He would, like, well, if we just look at the way of Jesus, like, okay, but I think the heart of like, let's have an urgency about seeing the world impacted or transformed by the love of Christ. Well, how do we do that? Well, it's not the way we do things. And that's probably what Peterson is referring to. Like, it's impossible to find a way to do that in the North America where you can go at God, because there's no ministry that's adopting God's speed, so to speak, you know, and that is, you do see that Jesus, that was his way. And I think, for me, that's a big heart of what I want to help, encourage in house church. I think there's an opportunity for that, but it doesn't necessarily, just because you're doing a house church or a simple church doesn't mean that you will live within your limits and look at the limits of the human of Jesus. I mean, in the human side of Jesus, as far as what he was bound to by taking on flesh, So yeah,
are y'all Chosen fans? Have y'all watched The Chosen?
Are you asking me if I'm a 5-point Calvinist or?
No, the TV show on the life of Jesus.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love that. Yeah, I have loved it.
I do too. We're big fans of it. I mean,
except for the last episode of the last season, I've told everybody just skip that one. That one drove me nuts. I can't imagine the disciples going around putting flyers up in the town for Jesus's preaching.
I didn't like that either. I thought I was.
Other than that, it's been awesome. I'm like, oh man, I'm just like that last one.
Yeah, my favorite part about season 2 is how they keep losing Jesus, right? It's hilarious. The disciples keep, well, I thought he was with y'all. No, I thought he was y'all. They finally find him, right? And every time they're like, where have you been? And he says something very much to the extent of, this was going to be a busy week. I had to spend time with the Father. I was on the mountainside praying. Like I needed to be with the Father before I entered into this week. I mean, it's unbelievable to me how much they show that in season 2. And I'm so grateful because it's so accurate and it's so true to who Jesus was. So I'm really glad they're showing that. But again, I think that's the call for you and for me and for all of us, right? we've got to go steal away, be with the Father so that we can engage back in. And I think when we have just lived engaged,
Yeah.
and that's been what has been killing us and sucking the life out of our souls.
Yeah. Let me ask you just, I mean, I could probably talk with you for hours and I will continue, but, as you know a little bit about what I'm doing and with like Simple Church, how has this Godspeed and this change you all made, how has that impacted the way you all think about or have experienced church, however you want to take that word? I mean, it could be mean a lot of ways.
Yeah. I think I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it has a lot. It may. I think we go right now to a really small local church. It's as unflashy as possible. I mean, it's hilarious how unflashy it is. But they live in, the church is centered in this really poor part of the town, and they have a huge impact. The first time we went to visit, my daughter, who was 17, she said, "Dad, that is real church. They're not messing around. That that's real. No one's going to pretend in there, because they have moved into the neighborhood, and what they're trying to do is really love the person next door. They're trying to love their neighbor in this really poor part of town, and they're making an impact. They're helping. They're involved. They're scripturally really sound, but what they're not trying to do is be something flashy and maybe what everyone else is trying to do, right? They're just simply trying to love the person next door. And I think when we begin to live at God's speed, when we begin to live intentionally, we're not worried about big, flashy, we're not worried about trying to impress and get big numbers. We're really just trying to make space so we can love the person next door. And so maybe that relates in some ways. But for us, what we've wanted is to have a little bit of margin in our lives so that we can actually care for our neighbors. I know when for a lot of years we didn't have that. We were going, and our neighbors would say, "Man, y'all are the busiest people we know. We don't hardly ever see y'all," and those kinds of things. And we just wanted that to change. And I think this church we're going to models that for us. It helps us think that way.
Yeah, I remember, kind of the reality, or like the weirdness, that how so many times like we would drive by people that lived within a rock's throw of us who we didn't even know their name, to go to a church to sit next to people that were inches from us who we still didn't know their name a lot of times, because we had to hurry up and get back to the next thing, and it's just, there's such a disjointedness. I think a lot of people, and I think the body of Christ is sort of kind of waking up to that a bit, in all places and areas, that, hey, we need to, we've sort of bought into a bill of goods that, we can do all this stuff. We can disciple people and worship God and be a part of world missions, and we can, be taught the Bible and teach others the Bible and encourage and all this, and in 45 minutes, and be at Applebee's by 12:15. It's like, I think all facets, people are waking up to that myth, that sort of we've kind of perpetuated, I think, unintentionally for many years. Man, that's good. What would you say, Bart? Like, a little bit about what we're about and doing, and I think there definitely is a lot of overlap. But I mean, if someone was listening to this, you and I talk about these things, and maybe they pulled this podcast up because they were thinking, oh, I want to be a part of house church, or I want to start house church. I mean, some of it you've already said, but what specifically might you say to that person, or what encouragement would you have for them?
Well, I think I tend to, I've got two things I'm going to say. Hopefully I can remember both, but I tend to go back to the basics. And what I think is we've just got to be rooted and grounded in our identity as his beloved before we try to do anything else.
Man,
And
amen.
to me, that's the beginning point, right? That's the beginning point. So that would be number one. The other thought I had was a friend of mine started, I don't know if he ever did anything with it or not, but he made these bumper stickers that said, change the world next door, or something like that.
Yeah.
And I think he started a website, or I'm not sure he did anything with it, but he realized he was a Christian singer-songwriter, worship leader. He was in his basement, like writing songs that he was hoping would literally change the world, right? I mean, he was down in the basement writing these songs, and he would be down there for hours. And one day he realized his neighbor across the street, who was a widow, was out cutting her grass, and it just, like a thunderclap, struck him, right? Like, I'm trying to do all this stuff big and splashy and change the world. It's like, what if I just loved my neighbor? I think that's what I ought to do. And I think if I love my neighbor, my wife, my children, my actual next door neighbor, it really that maybe that would change the world. And so those are probably the two thoughts that come to mind immediately when you ask me that question.
I think it was Mother Teresa. I probably botched the quote, but I think she said something to that same effect of, like, if you want to change the world, go home and love your family,
Yeah.
And it's so funny.
It was either Mother Teresa or Winston Churchill or Abraham Lincoln, or C.S. Lewis, because those are the ones that you give credit to no matter what. Just say it's one of them. And
I think it was one of
Mother
them.
Teresa. I'm pretty sure that was Mother Teresa.
but it's funny how I think, like, in the hustle and bustle of ministry, church ministry, even sometimes unintentionally, like, going home and loving your family, it just doesn't seem good enough. That doesn't seem to fit into, like, well, how is that gonna, but again, a mentor of mine, he always says, think big. Jesus, think big, have a global vision, focus on a few. Jesus focused on a few, and he went deep. And I think if we apply that, I always love that. Just think big, start small, go deep. It's kind of a neat little, it's kind of similar to what you're saying. Man, I appreciate it. Well, if someone wanted to come check out Ancient Way Farm, and I'll put some links on this YouTube to all this stuff, into the Godspeed, which is, we shared that. I've shared that before on our website, but I'm going to link all that up. But yeah, how would people get a hold of you guys?
It's easy. Ancientwayfarm.com is the website. And get on there, check it out, check out what we're doing, where we are, and come and retreat. It is a very small, I mean, this goes along with what we're talking about. It is a very small retreat center. I don't even like calling it a retreat center, but maybe it's a retreat center in the sense that not like a conference center where you're having 300 people come in and inviting Tim Keller to come speak. It's more like retreat, pull back. You're taking heavy fire. Come on. And so it's really, we I'd say it's more offering hospitality out of our home, but we do have a little cabin, and really we're best suited for one couple or one person, or maybe even two couples, three couples, something like that size. So it's really a small retreat center. We like to say that I might have already said this, I don't think I did though, but we like to say we're intentionally small so that we can really be intentionally relational with each guest. Yeah. And so instead of trying to do some big thing with a lot of scope, we're trying to go deep with one or two people so that they could go back out and be healthy. They can go back out and have they can go back out and do ministry like the Lord's called them to do. Yeah. And that can have a big impact. So yeah, it's a pretty small operation, but
I love that. You did say that, but that was last week when we were talking. Okay, and that was another thing. I've repeated it because, that's a great, I think, overlap. Like, we're being intentionally small as house church so that we can be intentionally relational. It doesn't necessarily mean that we will be intentionally relational always, because you can still just, you don't have to be relational just because you're small, but that's the benefit of being small, is that you can be, you could just, like, you could let people just sit out there and you could never go out and talk to them, or never ask questions, or never get to know them. You could just do your own thing and let them stay in your cabin, and then you never have a relationship. But because it is only one couple or two, you can have actually get to know them. And I think
and
that's
most people really, we're not super comfortable with being known. It's uncomfortable. So that word intentional is important, and you really have to be intentional about it. And we're made to be known. We're made to be known by the lover of our souls, or we're made in this fellowship. And so but it's not always easy, because people don't necessarily, you could easily even come to a small house church like you're talking about, and sit on the side and go home and go to Applebee's or whatever, like you said. But being intentional is a big part of it.
Well, I'm gonna wrap it up right there and just say thanks, and I'll definitely maybe have you back on. We can have some more of these conversations. But man, I really appreciate your time, and thanks for participating in this little discussion.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. I always love getting some time with Gavin.
There wasn't too much Kentucky smack talking. I appreciate that. I was very concerned about that.
I didn't say anything about national championship. Although, if you do see right there, that's me and my daughter at the Georgia game when she was, I don't know, maybe 3 years old.
The question is, do you have the belt buckle on today? That's the question.
Ooh, the belt buckle. I pulled it out. I got it in the other room. I can go get it if you'd like to see it.
I'm going to spare everyone, but he's got this ridiculous belt buckle that he wears on game day.
That's why we won it all last year. The belt buckle.
And I did get to join. That was fun seeing you guys. I got to go to see the game, Cats and the Dogs last year. There was some, I think there might have been some illegal things happening that caused that game to be so lopsided, but we won't get into that.
It was home cooking down there. Home cooking in Athens.
Thanks, Bart. I appreciate you being on here, man.
Yeah. Keep up the great work.